I never thought a simple smile across a counter could spiral into something so deep and so painful. My name's Emily. I run a small cafe on the corner of Ashwood Avenue. It's cozy, has big windows, and I know almost every regular by name. Life here is slow, steady, and frankly, a little predictable. I used to love that, until James walked in. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't try too hard. Crisp dress shirt, charming smirk, always asking for the same thing. Oat milk cappuccino, no sugar. The first few times we just exchanged polite smiles. Then came the lingering eye contact, the way his fingers brushed mine when I handed him his drink, the compliments that felt a little too personal to be casual. I won't lie, I liked it. I liked him. It wasn't long before he stayed after his coffee. We'd chat about books, music, our favorite places to escape to when life got too loud. He was funny, thoughtful, interested, and I felt like someone had finally seen me after a long time of just being invisible. So when he asked for my number, I gave it without hesitation. The very first thing I asked him was if he was married. It felt weird to ask so directly, but I've been burned before. Ghosted, lied to, all of it. I just needed to know. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "No, definitely not." And I believed him. God, I believed every word he said. 3 weeks. That's all it took for me to fall completely head over heels for him. We texted constantly, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing, and he came by the cafe every single day, sometimes just to sit in the corner while I worked, his eyes following me as if I was the only person in the world. He told me he loved me. It felt fast, sure, but it also felt real. And then, the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. One Friday evening, after the cafe closed, we were sitting in the back, just the two of us. He looked tense, restless. I remember the exact words he said. "There's something I need to tell you." I froze. "I'm married," he said, "and my wife's pregnant." The world stopped. I didn't even know how to respond. My throat dried up. My hands went cold. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. I just kept staring at him, trying to process how the man who looked at me like I was his universe could say something so cruel. He tried to explain, said his wife lived overseas, that they were technically together but hadn't seen each other in months, that they weren't happy, that he didn't expect to fall for me, and that what we had was real, still real. And then, he cried. I wish I could say that softened me, that seeing his tears made me believe him, but it didn't. It made me angry, furious even. I was the other woman, and I hadn't even known. He begged me not to hate him, said he didn't want to lose me, that he was confused, torn, but that he loved me. I left. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept replaying everything. The looks, the laughs, the "I love yous," and how they all felt like poison now. I wanted to hate him, but I still loved him. And that hurt more than anything. But the one thing I kept thinking about was her, his wife, pregnant, waiting for him, loving him. I imagined how she must be texting him goodnight, how she must be planning their future, completely unaware that while she was carrying their child, her husband was building a secret life with me. That thought made me sick. So I did the one thing I knew would shatter everything. I took a picture of us, one he had on his phone from a day at the lake, where he held me like he meant it, and I sent it to her. I found her contact in his phone, snapped the screen before I could second-guess myself, and hit send. No message, just the photo. A minute later, I blocked her number from his phone. He didn't know until the next morning. He stormed into the cafe, panicked, eyes wide. "Emily, what did you do?" "She deserved to know," I said calmly. He was pale, shaking, said she blocked him instantly, said she screamed over the phone, then cut him off. I didn't say anything else. just walked away and left him standing there in the middle of the cafe. And yet, he kept coming back. Every day, still saying he loved me, still asking to talk, still standing outside after I closed shop, hoping I'd let him in. And the worst part? I still loved him. I hated that I did. I hated that despite everything, part of me missed his laugh, the way he touched my hair, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. But I also hated myself. For falling. For believing. For being the one who ruined someone else's world. I don't know what to do. I want to move on, but he's everywhere. This town is small, and he lives 5 blocks away. Every time I try to ignore him, he finds some way back in. A text, a note, a glance through the cafe window. And now, I just feel lost. It's strange how love can turn into a battlefield in your own mind. Every morning, I'd walk into my cafe hoping, praying, that James wouldn't be waiting. And every morning, like clockwork, there he was, sitting at the corner table, that damn oat milk cappuccino untouched in front of him, his eyes glued to the door, like he was waiting for some sign that I'd forgiven him. I didn't talk to him. I couldn't. But I also couldn't bring myself to kick him out. Some days I'd catch myself watching him, wondering if he looked sad because he missed me, or if it was guilt because his whole web of lies had finally snapped. Other days, I wanted to scream at him, break every cup behind the counter, ask him why. Why did he lie? Why did he let me fall so hard, so fast, when he knew he had someone else? But mostly, I just felt numb. I started avoiding the shop's front in the mornings, letting my staff open instead. I'd hide in the back, pretending to do inventory, pretending like the ache in my chest wasn't there. But I couldn't avoid him forever. Not in this town. One night, after we'd closed, I was walking home, just a few blocks, the wind biting at my cheeks, and I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. It was James. He looked different. Not in the way he dressed, but the way he carried himself. Tired. Worn down. Like the weight of everything was finally pressing on him, the way it had crushed me days ago. "I just want to talk," he said, voice low. I stopped walking. "Emily, please." There was something about the way he said my name. Desperate. Broken. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he continued. "I swear to God, I never meant for this to happen. I was lonely. I was confused." "Don't," I cut in. "Don't make this about your confusion." He fell silent. I turned to face him, arms crossed, every part of me trembling, but not from the cold. "You made a choice, James. Every single day you chose to look me in the eyes and lie. You told me you loved me. I do love you. Then why did you let me fall into something that was never mine to begin with?" He had no answer. I started to walk again. He didn't follow. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. My chest tight, heart aching, mind racing. I hated this feeling, of not knowing what the hell I was supposed to do, of loving someone who broke me, but still missing the version of him that made me feel alive. And then came the guilt. Not just for loving him, but for what I did to his wife. I kept thinking about her, wondering what she felt when she saw that picture. Did she cry? Did she scream? Was she alone when she saw it? Or did someone have to hold her up as her world shattered? She didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve this. And yet, somehow, we were both casualties of the same man's cowardice. A few days later, I got a letter. Not a text, not an email. An actual handwritten letter left on the cafe counter by one of my baristas, who said a tall guy asked her to give it to me. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my nightstand for 2 days, untouched. But curiosity always wins, doesn't it? Inside, James had poured his heart out. He wrote about how his marriage had been rocky for years, how they were trying to make it work for the baby, how meeting me had made him realize what real connection felt like, how he couldn't stop thinking about me. And at the very end, he wrote, "I know I don't deserve you. I know I'm the villain in your story. But if you ever find it in your heart to forgive me, I'll be waiting." I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at those last words, feeling more lost than ever. Forgiveness? What even is that supposed to look like in this mess? Was I supposed to wipe the slate clean and pretend I hadn't been lied to, manipulated, used? Or was forgiveness just a way to let go, to release myself from the grip of all this pain? The next morning, he didn't come to the cafe. Or the next. Or the next. And I don't know why, but it made my stomach twist. Like I had gotten used to the rhythm of him being there, even if I hated it. Like his absence was somehow louder than his presence. A week passed, then two, and I started to feel something unexpected. Relief. Without him hovering in the background, I began to breathe again. The air in the cafe felt lighter. The days stretched out without emotional landmines. I started laughing with my staff again. I even caught myself humming along to the radio while wiping down tables. But late at night, he still haunted me. Not James, the liar, but James, the man who made me feel beautiful. The man who memorized my coffee order before I even realized I had one. The man who looked at me like I was worth something. I missed that James. But I had to remind myself that James was a fantasy, a mirage built on deception, and chasing it would only lead me back into the same pain I was just beginning to crawl out of. Still, the heart is stubborn. And mine hadn't let go yet. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after heartbreak. It's not the absence of sound. The cafe was still full of music, laughter, the hum of the espresso machine. But inside me, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I was functioning, smiling, making jokes, getting through my shifts like nothing had happened. But every once in a while I'd space out mid-order, my mind drifting back to that damn lake photo. The one I had sent to a stranger, to a woman I had unintentionally helped destroy. I wondered if she was still with him, if she'd forgiven him, if she was carrying his child while mourning the man she thought she knew. And I wondered, again and again, what if I had never sent it? Would I still be wrapped up in his lies? Still waiting at the door for him to walk in like a storm? I didn't regret telling her, but I hated that it made me feel like I was the villain, that somehow I was the one who caused the damage, not the man who orchestrated it all from the shadows. Then one afternoon, just as I was closing up, someone knocked on the cafe's glass door. I looked up and froze. It wasn't James. It was her. She was smaller than I imagined, softer. Her hair pulled back in a loose braid, her eyes swollen from what I assumed were days of crying. She clutched her phone like a weapon and stared at me like she had memorized every detail of my face from that picture. I opened the door slowly, not even knowing what to say. "Can I talk to you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. We sat in the back corner, the same spot James and I used to share. And for a long moment, neither of us said anything. The weight between us was unbearable. "I'm Liana," she finally said. "James's wife." I nodded again, swallowing hard. "I'm Emily." I figured. She let out a small, humorless laugh. "You're not what I expected." "I didn't know," I blurted out. "When we met, he told me he wasn't married. I asked him directly. I swear." "I believe you." Her words caught me off guard. "You were in the dark just like me," she continued, voice trembling. "He lied to both of us." "I'm so sorry," I whispered, suddenly fighting back tears. "I didn't mean to. I didn't want to hurt you." "I know." She looked down at her phone. "At first, I hated you. When I got that picture, I thought you were some cruel, heartless homewrecker. But then I looked at your face, and you looked happy. Genuinely happy. Like you thought he belonged to you." "I did," I admitted. "And when I found out, it broke me." We sat there in silence again. A strange kind of understanding forming between us. Two women, two broken hearts, one liar. She took a deep breath. I left him. My eyes widened. I moved out. I'm staying with my sister until I figure out what to do. I still don't know what I'll tell the baby when he's older. I reached across the table without thinking and placed my hand over hers. She looked at me, surprised, then didn't pull away. I admire you, I said. You're stronger than I could ever be. She smiled. A real one this time. You don't give yourself enough credit. Before she left, she stood up and looked around the cafe. This is a beautiful place, she said. Don't let him ruin it for you. And then she was gone. I stood there for a long time after, wondering if that moment had actually happened. If this bizarre, painful, twisted chapter of my life was finally coming to an end. But of course, real life never wraps up that neatly. Because 3 days later, James showed up again. This time, he didn't come into the cafe. He stood across the street, hands in his pockets, just watching. Like some ghost that refused to rest. I ignored him for hours, until finally I walked outside. He didn't say a word, just looked at me, eyes bloodshot, cheeks sunken. The silence between us was heavy, charged. I saw her, I said. He blinked. Liana? I nodded. She came to the cafe. She told me she left you. His jaw clenched. I didn't want that. She deserved better. We both did. He stepped forward. Emily, please. Don't shut me out. I know I messed up. I know I was wrong. But I'm trying. I'm not going to pretend I'm innocent, but I love you. My heart cracked all over again. You don't love me, I whispered. You love the idea of escaping. And I was your escape. That's not true. Yes, it is. You needed someone to make you feel alive again, and I was convenient. But real love doesn't grow in lies, James. He didn't argue. He just stood there, defeated. I took a step back. I'm done. Don't come back. And for once, he listened. The days that followed felt still, like someone had pressed pause on my life. James was gone, truly gone. No texts, no calls, no lurking across the street. Just silence. And at first, it felt like freedom. I didn't have to brace myself every time the cafe door chimed open. I didn't have to scan the sidewalk while locking up, half expecting him to be waiting there in the shadows. I could breathe again, think again, be alone with my thoughts without the heavy weight of his presence pressing on every corner of my heart. But then came the echoes. They say grief isn't just for death. You grieve love too. You grieve what could have been. And that's exactly what I did. I grieved the mornings he made me laugh so hard I spilled coffee on myself. The afternoons he read poetry on his phone and pretended he wasn't tearing up. The evenings he'd walk me home and hold my hand like it was made of glass. I grieved the fantasy I had built around him. The version of James that I had fallen in love with didn't exist. He was a carefully constructed illusion, born out of charm and lies. And yet, it was that version I mourned the most. Not the real man, but the dream he let me live in for just long enough to believe it was real. I started journaling again. It had been years since I kept a diary, but something about putting pen to paper helped me untangle the mess inside my head. Most entries started with anger, how dare he, and ended in sorrow. Why did I let this happen? But slowly, the entries began to shift. One morning, I wrote, I deserve more. And the next, this isn't the end of me. Healing is strange. It never feels like progress in the moment. You expect it to be a straight line. Grief, anger, clarity, peace. But it's not. It circles, spirals. Some days you feel light, and the next you're drowning in the weight of a memory that hits you out of nowhere. But even so, I kept going. And then something happened that made me feel, for the first time, like I was truly moving forward. It was a Tuesday. I was restocking the pastry case when a woman came in, maybe mid-40s. Warm smile, professional, but relaxed. She looked around, then said, "This place has a soul." I smiled. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. She introduced herself as Clara, said she was visiting family in town and happened to stumble across the cafe. We chatted. Nothing intense, just casual, comfortable. She asked about the menu, complimented the decor, told me she used to run a bookstore back in Vermont. When she left, she said, "I'll be back tomorrow. I want to try the lavender shortbread." And she did come back. The next day, and the day after that. Within a week, Clara had become a part of the cafe's rhythm. She'd sit by the window with her tea, sometimes scribbling in a notebook, sometimes chatting with me between customers. Her presence was quiet but grounding. And for some reason, I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone else. I didn't go into details about James, just mentioned that I had been through something messy. Her eyes were kind, understanding, like she knew without needing to ask. One afternoon, she said something I'll never forget. "You don't have to carry the whole story forever, just the lessons." I blinked. "That sounds like something from a quote board," she chuckled. "Probably is, but it's true. Heartbreak leaves marks, but they don't have to become permanent weight. You get to decide what stays." That night, I stayed behind after closing, staring at the empty cafe, her words echoing in my head. "You get to decide what stays." It was then I realized I had a choice. I could keep letting James's betrayal define me, keep replaying the hurt, the lies, the guilt. Or I could let it be a chapter, not the whole story. So I did something that felt incredibly small, but immensely powerful. I deleted the lake photo, the one I had sent to his wife, the one that had changed everything. I stared at it for a while before hitting delete. My finger hovered over the screen like it was trembling with the weight of it all. But I did it. And in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't closure, not entirely, but it was the beginning of peace. Spring came early that year. It crept in quietly, soft breezes through the cafe windows, golden sunlight pooling on the wooden floor, the smell of jasmine from the planter boxes outside. The town began to thaw, and so did I. I started painting again. It was something I hadn't touched in years, not since college, when life still felt like possibility instead of routine. I dug out my old brushes from a dusty storage bin in the back of my apartment, bought a few cheap canvases, and let myself get messy. It wasn't about talent, it was about release. I painted emotions I didn't have words for. Thick, chaotic strokes when the memories burned, soft, blending colors when the pain dulled. Each piece looked like a confession. And one night, while closing the cafe, I hung one up on the back wall. Customers started noticing. They'd ask who the artist was, and I'd shrug. Just me, messing around. But they always smiled, told me it made the space feel more alive. And maybe that was the point, because I was starting to feel alive again, too. I wasn't over James. Let's be honest. Heartbreak doesn't have an expiration date. But I was beginning to understand that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming. My cafe, my mornings, my peace, myself. Clara, as always, became my quiet cheerleader. She'd sit by the window and watch me paint in the back between rushes. Some days, she'd bring pastries from another shop just to compare. Other times, she'd tell me stories about her bookstore and her customers, stories full of warmth, eccentricity, and the kind of life that feels earned. One afternoon, she said, "You ever think about starting over somewhere else?" The question stunned me, not because I hadn't thought about it, but because I hadn't allowed myself to really consider it. Leaving this town meant leaving the pain, but also the comfort, the familiarity, the place where I'd built something real. "I don't know," I admitted. "This place feels like home, even when it hurts." She nodded. "Sometimes healing means staying. Other times, it means giving yourself permission to go." I didn't answer her then, but the thought lingered. A few nights later, I ran into James's friend, someone I'd only met a handful of times when James still came around. He was polite, awkward, clearly unsure if he should even be talking to me. But then he said something that made my stomach flip. He moved. I blinked. "What?" "James. He left town. Said he needed to reset. I don't know. He didn't tell many people. Just packed up and went." I felt nothing. No heartbreak. No anger, no longing. Just a quiet, unexpected emptiness, like hearing the final echo of a song that had been playing on repeat in your head for too long. He was gone. Really, truly gone. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need closure from him. I had found it in myself, in the way I showed up every day, kept going, kept living. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need to hear, "You were right," or "I'm sorry again." His absence was enough. He left. I stayed. And in that staying, I found strength. That night, I took down the last photo of us. It had been taped to the inside of a notebook, almost forgotten. A candid picture of him sipping coffee in the sunlight, the day he told me he loved me. I stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, I ripped it in half. And then again. And again. Until it was nothing but fragments on the floor. The next morning, I arrived early at the cafe. Earlier than usual. The town was still quiet, the sky painted in soft blues and pinks. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, played my favorite acoustic playlist, and sat by the window where Clara usually sat. And I wrote a letter, not to James, to myself. Dear Emily, you survived something that almost broke you. You loved with everything you had, and when that love turned on you, you didn't crumble. You healed. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. You are not what happened to you. You are who you became after. And that woman? She's strong. She's enough. She's free. I folded the letter and tucked it into the drawer beneath the register. Not because I needed to read it again, but because maybe one day someone else would. And they'd need it more than I did. Summer crept in with golden light and warm evenings. The cafe was busier now. Tourists wandering through town, locals dropping by for iced lattes and fresh muffins. The hum of life returned in full swing, and I found myself swept up in it, in the best way. One Saturday morning, I stepped outside during a lull, coffee in hand, breathing in the warm breeze. The street was alive, dogs tugging on leashes, children chasing each other, the air filled with laughter and summer dust. For the first time in months, I stood there and felt at peace. Not just okay, not just surviving, but actually happy. And that happiness didn't come from anyone else. It wasn't borrowed from a smile, or wrapped up in a late-night text, or dependent on someone walking through the door. It was mine, built from the pieces I had picked up along the way. One afternoon, Clara didn't show up. Then the next day, and the day after that, I wasn't worried. Not at first. But after a week, I called the number she had given me for emergency orders. She always joked I'd need it when she eventually moved away and missed my lavender cookies too much. She picked up on the second ring. "Emily?" she said, her voice warm but distant. "Hey," I said gently. "Everything okay? You disappeared on me." There was a pause. "I'm in Vermont," she said. "My brother had a fall and I flew back. I've been meaning to call. Is he okay?" "He will be, stubborn old man." I smiled softly. Then she added, "I think I'm going to stay here. For a while. Maybe permanently." I felt something tighten in my chest. I hadn't realized how much she had anchored me, how much I had leaned on her without even knowing. "That makes sense," I said. "Your bookstore's here. Your people." She chuckled. "You're my people too, Emily. But this next chapter, it's calling me." After we hung up, I sat at one of the back tables and stared at the space where she always used to sit. It was empty, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt open, ready. That night, I pulled out my journal and flipped to the back. A blank page. And I made a list. Things I want to do. Host an art night at the cafe. Travel, just anywhere. Let someone in again, when I'm ready. Write a letter to the woman I was 6 months ago. Fall in love, not with someone else, but with myself. It felt silly at first, writing it all down. But as I stared at that list, I realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not waiting for James to come back. Not waiting for apologies or explanations. Not waiting for someone to give me permission to move on. I was already moving. Already living. A few weeks later, a customer came in. A guy around my age, messy hair, shy smile. He asked if we had oat milk. I laughed a little too loudly, which made him laugh too. He wasn't James. He didn't remind me of James. He was just someone. And for the first time in forever, I let the conversation go on a little longer, just long enough to feel curious again. I don't know if it'll go anywhere. Maybe he'll be a friend. Maybe he won't come back. Maybe he'll become a story. Or maybe he'll just be a footnote. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I had space again. Space to hope. Space to feel. Space to dream without fear. And when I walked home that night, the streetlights casting soft halos across the pavement, I realized something else. I wasn't the girl who fell for a lie anymore. I was the woman who rose from it. Thanks for joining me today here on Love on Reddit. If today's story resonated with you, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more real, heartfelt stories every week. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences or feelings in the comments below. Remember, love isn't always perfect, but every story matters. See you soon, and take care of your heart.